Hello there and welcome along to this week's episode of the Drive and Maul podcast, brought to you from the Atrium campus at the University of South Wales in Cardiff. In this episode we'll be reviewing the weekend's autumn internationals, as well as debating whether or not Ireland can be classed as World Cup favourites after their win against New Zealand. We'll conclude by looking ahead to this weekend's internationals as the autumn series draws to a close. Well, what a weekend of international rugby that was. A lot of very closely, highly competitive games and a lot of storylines came out of it. I'm here with Dan, Jamil, Nathan and Richard to review it, and we'll just start off by briefly introducing ourselves. So I'm the host, I'm Tom, a 21-year-old second year sports journalism student at the University of South Wales. I'm a Scarlets fan and I've had a season ticket there for the last 10 years, started supporting them around 15 years ago, and I also used to play rugby.
My name is Richard. I'm a 19-year-old sports journalism student at the University of South Wales, and my connection to rugby is I used to play, and I was also a season ticket holder at Ulster Rugby for several years.
Hi, I'm Jamil. I'm a 20-year-old sports journalism student as well. My link to rugby would be that I cover the USW rugby first team, and I'm doing so for the rest of the year.
I'm Nathan Parker, and I'm a rugby referee. I also work on the media team for Pontypridd RFC, which is very enjoyable. I'm also 22 years old, and I'm also a sports journalist, and I'm in year 2.
And I'm Dan Cope, and I'm also doing sports journalism for a second year. I'm more of a football fan than a rugby fan, but the interest in rugby is growing each passing day.
Thanks for that, guys. I guess the best place to start really from a Welsh perspective is the game on Saturday, and obviously not the best sort of 40 minutes for Wales, but we came strong in the second 40. What do you guys think of the performance in the second half, scoring 50 unanswered points?
Yeah, I thought the second half was unbelievable, really. Obviously, when the game went to 24 all, I think it was a bit like squeaky bum time, really, for the Welsh team. We've been here before when, we've sort of had these nip and tuck games against tier 2 or tier 3 sides, when really we should really be doing what we did on Saturday. I thought the performances of Dan Biggar really helped. His leadership there, to have a sort of experienced fly half like Dan there. We haven't really had that in years gone past. We've sort of given players a chance. Like a few years ago, we started bringing Priestland back into the fold, and then obviously Sam Davis emerged then last year or 2 years ago, and we tried to give these players a game, but to have that 10 there with an experienced head just to control the game, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Dan Biggar's performance here, there are a lot of good performances all around the park. Do you think Biggar's performance could put him into the sort of selection frame for the weekend's game against South Africa? 100%.
Obviously there's a lot of talk with Gareth Anscombe, how well he's played over the first 2 games against Scotland and Australia. Personally though, I think with the size of the Springboks side, I remember Dan Biggar, the first time we beat the Springboks in 2014 for the first time in 15 years. Dan Biggar was man of the match, and he just tackled South Africa off the park. He's one of those fly halves that doesn't shake out of a tackle. And I think Anscombe, obviously there's a lot of debate whether Halfpenny's going to be actually fit for the game with the concussion protocols. So it's whether you put Anscombe or Patchell fullback and Dan Biggar at 10. I think that would suit Wales down to the ground, really.
So you go for Biggar at 10? Or
100%, yeah.
Are there any, what's everyone else thinks, are there any other sort of opinions for who they want to start?
Probably Anscombe, just because of the way he played against Australia, Scotland. I think he more or less deserves to play against the big side in South Africa again. I mean, don't get me wrong, Biggar had a great game, deservingly man of the match. Patchell against coming into the fold, got a good try on the weekend, and definitely a quality player. But I think just the way Anscombe plays with that bit of flair, he's a good ball carrier. I think he will provide maybe a bit more danger, a bit more attack going forward for Wales, maybe so than Biggar, because we all know what Dan Biggar can do. Certainly his kicking game's more spot on, but I think Anscombe just edges it for me.
Yeah, so good performance for Wales on Saturday, and it was like sort of watching similar to what the All Blacks do really in that second half, where they kind of up the tempo and the players off the bench kind of offer a lot. There was a incident where Tonga's blindside flanker Dan Valiafra, there was a challenge on the Dragons' blindside flanker Aaron Wainwright. What do we think of that? It didn't go, it went unpunished, but do we think the World Rugby need to kind of come up with a clearer ruling on tackles like that?
Obviously there's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks of the tackle laws, obviously You had Owen Farrell against South Africa on the substitute, when personally, in my opinion, that was a penalty. And then obviously, I think the referee on Saturday, I haven't really seen him before, to be honest. He seems like a new upcoming referee from Australia, and I don't think he was really used to the big stage. And obviously, in the first few minutes, he yellow carded one of the Tongan players for collapsing the driving maul, which went over the line, which was another fantastic driving maul from Wales, showing what they can do in the set piece. But overall, I think the tackle on Aaron Wainwright was just needless. He was off the ball, it was high, and it was also with the shoulder. There was no intent there, and if he just stood there and just took the hit, then fair enough, play on. But for the referee not to even go back and have a look at it, I was quite surprising for me.
Yeah, it's certainly an area where there's a lot of grey area in rugby at the moment. Few issues there. So you've mentioned some of the good performances that the Wales had. What other areas, sort of positions wise, do you think there could be selection issues heading into this weekend?
Definitely, I think so. On the wing, if you look at Gatland's now's got a selection headache. You got Josh Adams, you got North. Lee Williams can go there. He had an impressive game against Tonga in his 50th cap. So I don't think Steph Evans is quite there yet in terms of first team selection. I think probably it will go towards Josh Adams and Liam Williams if he sticks to it, because if Halfpenny is fit enough to play, he will play fullback. Gatland's always relied on him to do the job. So, but then again, an informed George North is one of the best in the world when he's on his day. So it's a great selection headache to have for Wales. I think it's the most impressive they've been in terms of squad depth for a long, long time. But I think it remains to be seen. I think Josh Adams and Liam Williams probably for me.
Yeah, on George North, I've seen this morning Jonathan Davis has actually called for him to be dropped on Saturday against South Africa. He wants to either see Josh Adams or Liam Williams in the limelight instead. So I think that's an interesting one coming from Jonathan Davis. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but Liam Williams was obviously superb on Saturday. And I wouldn't have a problem with him on Saturday again against South Africa. I think he'll do a good job again.
I also think it's obviously we talked about earlier when Wales was struggling against the likes of Tonga and these tier 2 nations. It was only a year ago that I think it was last June we played Tonga in Eden Park and we beat them 24-6, and that day we had the likes of Josh Navidi, Thomas Young, Alex Cuthbert, Jamie Roberts, those sort of players that are experienced, have been in and around the game for quite a while. And then you come to Saturday, and obviously I think it was only a year ago or a year and a week ago that we played Georgia, and we really did struggle. And again, we had a few experienced heads there as well, like Priestland, like Roberts, like Lydiot. For this young side to go out against a Tonga side and be brought back down to their level when they went to 24 all, having been so far ahead, and then just to score 50 points without reply. I don't know whether you look at the mentality of the players, how much that's improved, or you either look at the fitness of the Welsh side. Obviously, I think there was only one Tongan player that actually plays his rugby in Tonga, so it shows that a lot they are spread out and they are playing professional rugby. But you have to look at the way obviously Gatland's legacy that he's trying to leave for Wayne Pivac. I think I worked it out that if we win every game now until the end of Gatland's reign, obviously Grand Slam champions, world champions, and would be 25 games winning streak, which wouldn't be too bad.
That's certainly very good.
Yeah, I think Gatland's got a massive selection headache, because to make 14 changes originally from the side against Australia, I know it was Tonga who are 12th in the world at the minute, but to make that many changes yet create the biggest score Wales have ever had, and by the winning margin as well, it's the biggest they've ever had as well, to score 10 tries with those players who may be a little bit less experienced. As you said, on the wings, like the likes of Steph Evans scored, Liam Williams scoring, it's just a massive selection headache for the manager.
Yeah, some good points there. I think the main thing really was both of you mentioned there with the sort of previous games where we've made a lot of changes and struggled. I think the main difference here is kind of obviously we had the Argentinian tour over the summer, and a lot of the players got blooded there. So coming into this game, it was 14 changes, but they'd all kind of played with each other before, so you didn't have that kind of issue. So that's probably the main reason for that. So we just spoken about sort of the last weekend's game and looking ahead. We'll continue to look ahead to the South Africa game. They had a good win against Scotland on Saturday, narrow 26-20 win at Murrayfield. What do we make of their win, and sort of how do you think we're going to fare against them?
I think South Africa proved that they are a very fit side in terms of they never stop pressuring Scotland, never stop going for the full 80. I think Scotland did take them to the wire. Obviously, 2026 is a very close scoreline. I don't think South Africa would be too pleased because there are weaknesses there, especially with South Africa attacking from the back. I think Wales can easily, they take advantage of those errors because South Africa are very weak in those types of positions. But South Africa, they are one of the best teams in the world, no doubt about that. They're a force to be reckoned with. But they will need to definitely improve from the Scotland game because Scotland did take them to the wire.
And what do you make of the impact that the new head coach Rassie Erasmus has had since he took over? When he took over, there was a lot of sort of turmoil. There was quite a poor South African team. We beat them last year in the autumn relatively comfortably. They're a different prospect now. What do we make of the impact that he's had?
Well, he was at Munster, wasn't he?
Yeah,
for a period, and obviously he was. I think South Africa needed him. Obviously, I think he wanted to spend the year with Munster and sort of see it out. But when your country calls, you go back to them. I think the biggest indication for me was when they came up against England last summer, or this summer even. Obviously just before the Rugby Championship, and to defeat them 2-1. It wasn't just beating them; it was the way they played. And I know it's an England side that probably isn't as good as 2 years ago, but the way they played was the South African way. And there's a lot of pace up wide again. Obviously going back to Saturday's game against Scotland, Andre Pollard was absolutely superb. I haven't really seen him play as well as he did on Saturday. He controlled the game, and they've been looking for a fly half like that for so many years. I remember Butch James in 2007. He was that catalyst for that World Cup winning side. And obviously when you have backs like Jesse Creel, you have Faf de Klerk at scrum half, who's arguably one of the best scrum halves in the world at the minute. They're getting these world class players there. Obviously the captain as well. Just a little mention on him. Obviously, I don't think he might even play on Saturday. Obviously, there was a contentious decision on Saturday that the officials missed when he apparently tried to headbutt one of the Scottish players. So that'll be something to look at. But again, he's another fantastic player, and obviously Dwayne Vermeulen has come back into the fold as well.
Yeah, what do you make of that? It was the challenge. It was a bit, I guess, it was kind of naughty, but it's sort of like rugby league challenge where players hold on to it a bit long. It reminded me of that a little bit. What do we kind of make of that? It was bit of a 50-50 one.
Yeah. I'd agree with that there. It's a bit of a 50-50 challenge. Like you say, it's like a rugby league challenge. So, I'm not too sure on that one really.
Yeah, certainly going to be a good game this weekend. Should be a lot closer than last year. South Africa sort of always had their physicality, but I think there's a bit more skill than now. People like Pollard, you mentioned, it was a masterful performance from him really against Scotland. He was man of the match by some distance. So what do we think? How can we see the game on Saturday going?
I honestly think Wales are in the ascendancy at the moment. I haven't been as confident as I've been in a while in an ultimate international series anyway. We usually do finish strong anyway. We're usually slow starters, and to start like we did against Scotland and get that 11-point victory, and then obviously going into the Australia game, it was such a sort of cloud hanging over our heads for so long. Getting the win off against them and getting the monkey off our back, which just gave this whole squad so much confidence, even though it wasn't the best of games. And then on Saturday, destroying Tonga. You just see this side just sort of going further and further now, and I just hope they don't peak too early in terms of going into the World Cup next year.
Yeah, Wales, of course, I think are the favourites because obviously the third in the world to minute South Africa fifth, but I think it'll be a very tight game because Wales, they're at home, they've got the home support behind them, and they're at the Principality as well. But can you really compare the Scotland score, considering Wales last year in the Six Nations defeated Scotland 34-7 at the Principality? It's a difficult one. I think it's going to be a game of fine lines really, but Wales really need to target the likes of, as you say, Andre Pollard, who he was a massive form, as you've mentioned earlier. So if he can keep him quiet, who's the main sort of source of every sort of play that South Africa are going to try and create, then I think Wales will win that game.
Yeah, maybe it's going to be one where, like I say, the home advantage is a deciding factor. So we've looked at Wales solely so far, but obviously there was a lot more games happening on the weekends, some very very entertaining games, and probably the pick of them, well, definitely was the Islands win against New Zealand, the first win against the All Blacks on home soil. As Steve Hansen mentioned after the game, that I'm not sure if it was mind games, he said like, oh, they're now favourites of the World Cup, it's their time, they're the best in the world. Maybe a bit of sort of tongue in cheek there, but so we'll look ahead to the Six Nations and the World Cup. Do we see them being favourites for both, or probably favourites for the Six Nations surely, but the World Cup, obviously they haven't been in such good form heading into a World Cup for a long time. Do we think this is finally their time?
Personally, for me, I do think that they can win it this time around. You look down the years, obviously they haven't had a good World Cup pedigree. But if you look at their stats, I think I see the stat over the last year and a half or so that they're unbeaten at home at the Aviva Stadium, and they've beaten all the top 10 nations, and that's the form that you need going into a World Cup. Obviously there was Six Nations as well, but I feel like the Six Nations is almost a bit part next year. It always is in a World Cup year, is always trying to get these sort of players involved in the squads, and luckily Wales have started that early, and I think Ireland started it maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago when they beat New Zealand in Chicago. They took a lot of players out there that weren't really used to international rugby, and they defeated them quite convincingly. You look at the players that they have now in abundance. You look at Conor Murray not playing on Saturday and Marmion starting. The strength in depth is clearly there, and when Omani went off, maybe an Ireland side of past years with when O'Connell or O'Driscoll went off the pitch, they might have stuttered a bit, but they still managed to pull through and beat one of the best sides of all time.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one because we're talking about two completely different competitions. Obviously, Six Nations is the nearest one coming up in February. It's not too far away. I would say Ireland are definitely the favourites for that between Wales and Ireland for me. But talking about the World Cup, that's like just under a year away. It's a long time to be thinking in advance. And of course, the World Cup is a competition. It's made up of so many games and so many fine lines and margins that can dictate anything. And Ireland obviously beating New Zealand at the weekend was superb. Ireland were massively the better side throughout the whole game, I thought, but the game could have also gone either way, like when Stockdale attempted a chip and it was blocked and New Zealand failed to capitalise on that. If they'd scored that try, then it was a completely different game and New Zealand probably would have won it. That was New Zealand away from home. Ireland of course have won 11 games at the Aviva Stadium, so they're difficult to beat there, but going to the likes of Japan again and play New Zealand there, that will be I think that will be the biggest sort of test.
Yeah, I guess it's still quite hard to back against New Zealand, kind of whatever happens. Do you think like Ireland's win on Saturday has kind of shown like a blueprint of a way to beat them? Obviously it's easier said than done, but there's kind of a plan there for other teams to look at and go from. You look at the way Wales are trying to do things nowadays. I always feel like Wales are almost like a step behind these nations that take a leap of faith and start putting actual more faith into the players. Gatland played more or less the same 15 for the about 4 or 5 years when he first started. I don't think that helped us at all. He's seen the benefits now, obviously, with the players coming through, Ellis Jenkins and the like, obviously Tyler Morgan coming back on Saturday. But Ireland did this 2 years ago, as I said, and I just think the attacking play, the defensive play, everything about his set piece. You look at the try Jacob Stockdale scored on Saturday. Not many teams in World Rugby could score that or even defend it. It was just so off the cuff, and to do that with the confidence to do that against, as I said, one of the best teams in World Rugby for the past 15 years is a credit to be given to Ireland.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the game, in the first half, New Zealand seemed a bit rattled at the start Ireland had. Like the likes of when the player stuck his hand out to block the ball, giving a silly penalty, things like that. They were just making little silly errors in New Zealand that they probably wouldn't usually make. So I don't know whether it was the intimidating factor of playing at the Aviva Stadium, or or they just didn't turn up. It'll be interesting to see once they next meet again.
Yeah, it was certainly a very raucous atmosphere there. That surely had to play a part in it. Obviously Ireland weren't the only ones to have a good game. Wayne Barnes, referee, had also a very good game, kind of let the game flow and showed why he's probably the best referee in the world. He's obviously announced he's going to be retiring after next year's Rugby World Cup. Do we think, obviously barring if England don't get the final, do we think that he deserves a shot at refereeing a final before he hangs up his boots?
It's hard to say really, because obviously Nigel Owens has been the catalyst for referees around the world over the last 5 or 6 years. But if you look back to Wayne Barnes' first World Cup in 2007, he obviously made the howler against the All Blacks for France when there was a clear forward pass and France scored through and ended up going into the semi-finals. How a referee can get over that, and because if I'm honest, I didn't really rate him when he first came through. A lot of inexperience he showed, but he is clearly one of the best, if not the best, referee in the world at the minute. I'm not being biased, but I think Nigel, being the last World Cup that he'll officiate, or maybe the last international games that he will officiate, there's a lot of rumours that he will retire after the World Cup. I would love to see him given the job for the final game.
Yeah. Just looking at a tweet on Twitter here from Newcastle Falcons' media manager Mark Smith. He said, Wayne Barnes, how can we let this bloke retire refereeing with a cigar on, best out there by a mile?
Yeah.
I guess that sums up quite well. Obviously he made two kind of contentious decisions during the game. There was Rob Kearney's tackle in the air and also Sam Whitelock's really purposely knocked the ball on. What do you make of those? Do you think they probably deserved cards? And obviously he tried letting the game flow, but maybe you have to step in a bit there.
I think as a referee, you do try to, as you said, let the game flow. But there's times in the game where you just need to switch on a bit more. And in the spirit of the game, I think it was fair to just keep 15 on the field because they were contentious decisions, but still he managed to deal with it in the right manner, if you know what I mean. I think if Ireland lost the game, then maybe a lot of Irish people would have come out and said differently. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Ireland celebrating. Steve Hansen's come out and said, as you said, the best side in world rugby at the minute. I don't know if it was tongue-in-cheek. I genuinely do believe that he wouldn't have said that if he didn't mean it. Because Steve Hansen's not one of those type of characters that would just say something for effect. But I do think that Wayne Barnes did have a good game.
Yeah, certainly contributed to the game.
Yeah, I thought he was terrific throughout the game. First half especially. There was in the second half that incident where he gave a forward pass to Ireland when it didn't look like it was a forward pass at all. Yeah. But that's just one decision that I think he got wrong. But he had a terrific game overall, and yes, I do agree that he should be allowed to referee in a major final before he retires.
Yeah, I think sometimes people underestimate how important refs are. I think the difference with sort of him, if say compare him to Nigel, is maybe Nigel Owen steps in a bit more, which people like for sort of like a highlight reel of sort of funny. But I think in a game like that, the way Barnes refereed it was great. Like obviously you step in when you have to, but I think he let a lot go, but like in the spirit of the game, and that was certainly a massive factor. So we've looked at we've focused on teams so far. We'll have a closer look at players now, and obviously we're heading into the final week of the autumn series, and we've picked out some players which we're gonna have a focus on heading into the last weekend. And what players have you looked at, lads?
Well, I looked at flanker Zach Mercer, plays for England, and Bath as well. He's only 21 years of age, started against Japan. Not a stand-up performance by any means. Then again, you can't argue that any England player really had that stand-up performance against Japan. They were poor. But, he was the captain of the England under-20 team. They won the Grand Slam 2017 Six Nations. He's also captained the team at junior level as well in 2017 Junior World Cup. Scored the winning try in semi-final against South Africa as well. He's a very attack-minded player, very good ball carrier. And, he reached the final with New Zealand. So he won the Rugby Junior World Cup Player of the Year, so he's a very good young talent to have for England coming through. I think with Cockness England as well, I talked about before, he said about how powerful winger is he again, 21 years of age, scored a try on the weekend. So yeah, they have got some good attack-minded players coming through, young players, but Zach Mercer for me, I think he's definitely one to watch for the future.
Yeah, only 21 years old, so definitely want to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the future, Jacob Stockdale is already massively on the scene, but we have to remember he's only 22 years of age. He's played in 14 tests and scored 12 tries for Ireland. Obviously that massive one against New Zealand as well. But I think the pace and skill and confidence that he shows in the ball, like at the weekend, even after he had that failed sort of chip, he went on a few minutes later to attempt another chip and score the match-winning try, really. So he's definitely the one to watch for me.
Yeah, I've gone for Hugh Jones for Scotland. Obviously on Saturday, two sublime pieces of skill off the back passes to set up a try for Peter Horn. Obviously they didn't win the game, but I think he was a standout performer in that game. And they've got Australia on Saturday, which again is a big test for Scotland. So I've gone for Hugh Jones. I think he's going to be a pivotal player on Saturday if Scotland get anything from the game. And he's my one to watch. Yeah.
My player to watch was Ellis Jenkins, especially with a week coming ahead up against South Africa. I do believe that he will start with Justin Tipperick in the back row. I do think Dan Lydiard has been fantastic, but I think Ellis Jenkins, is great just to have an extra 7 on the field with Tipperick. They both complement each other, and he's the ideal captain, I feel, to take over Anna Wynne-Jones when he does retire. You look at the injuries that Ellis has had over the past few years and the way he's come back. He went on the New Zealand tour, and I think he got his first cap against New Zealand 2 years ago, and he's just been plagued with injuries since then. And for him to show the courage to come back, go on to captain Blues, then to the Challenge Cup victory last season, and then to go on and captain Wales against Tonga, one of the biggest victories we've ever had over them, is something to be shouted about, really.
Yeah, he's obviously got a lot of leadership qualities, and do you think, obviously he played a lot with Sam Warburton at the Blues, do you think like he's taken a lot from him, playing with him week in, week out? I
think you're bound to. You look at Sam Warburton when he first got into the Blues, he was obviously taking lessons off Martin Williams, or the dark arts of, being on the borderline of offside and being in the rucks, ruining ball for the opposition. And Ellis Jenkins is exactly the same. He's almost like a blueprint of Sam Warburton. The players that the Blues have brought through in the back row is quite incredible, and it would be interesting to see the amount of caps that Ellis Jenkins does get, because you see obviously Dan Lydiate, Gatland does love Dan Lydiate quite a lot, but Wales, the way Wales are playing at the minute, it's almost like Gatland's giving him a free roll instead of more structured play. It's very much unstructured now. You see the likes of Steph Evans, Owen Watkin in the back line. They're giving him the freedom of Cardiff, really. And I think that Ellis Jenkins, as I said, can be captain for many years to come.
Yeah, I had Sam Warburton spoke about him on the weekend. He was talking about him very highly. So, if Sam Warburton's speaking about it like that, there's certainly a lot to come. So it wasn't just international rugby that happened on the weekend. There was a game on Friday night down at the Bridgefield in Bedwas, which I went down to. It was Dragons took on Russia. Russia coached by Lynn Jones, who was a former coach of the Dragons. Very entertaining game. Dragons came out on top 38-24. Russia obviously qualified for the upcoming World Cup, and they didn't start their strongest team, but they put in a pretty impressive performance. Up until sort of the last 10 minutes, they were within one score with 31-24, but a late try for the Dragons sort of took the game away from them. It was a very good evening overall. It was well hosted by Bedwas. Russia struggled slightly at the set piece. I think they Lynn Jones, I saw after the game, he'd admitted that he expected that to happen with their front five went they were quite lightweight. Dragons scored 2 tries from driving mauls. Russia's lock Alexander Ilin-Impressed, he scored 2 tries. He scored right at the start of the game, and he scored in the second half. He looks a fair unit, and the man of the match was given to Rodri Davis, who's the Dragons scrum half. He was sharp all game, good speed, and his service is very good from the scrum. And also Jack Dixon, I thought captained the Dragons well from inside centre, and obviously the South African Reinhard Landman played as well, and he was a stand-up player really. He wouldn't have been far off getting the man of the match. He was very impressive, led from the front, and yeah, it was a good test, I think, for the younger Dragons players. Obviously there was a few experienced players there as well, but the younger players who have taken a lot from it, and similarly with the Russians as well. So we'll look ahead now to next weekend's internationals. It's the final week of the 2018 Autumn Internationals. We've spoken about Wales, South Africa, so we'll look more to the other games. We've got Scotland, Argentina at Murrayfield. Obviously not the best autumn for Scotland, losing to Wales and South Africa. Do we think they can finish on a positive note?
I was quite disappointed with the way Scotland actually played on Saturday. I think they've lost one match in the last 10 or 11 at Murrayfield, and that game was against New Zealand. I think they only lost that by 5 points. But against South Africa, it was almost like Scotland scored that amazing try through Peter Horn after great work from Hugh Jones. And then they went from that to conceding a try 2 minutes later against Andre Pollard. I know it was a slip by Maitland, but there's just little things like that at the international level you can't make those sort of mistakes. You've got to, if you get straight back into the game, you've got to keep it there, and obviously conceding a try straight away just dampens the crowd, dampens the atmosphere. But against Argentina for me, they've made. I took another step back. I think they're trying new players going into the World Cup. The playing in the Rugby Championship helps them a lot. I do believe Scotland will beat them.
Yeah, that should be a good game. And another one which should be closely fought is England, Australia. Obviously Australia will be right up for this one. England haven't had the best autumn. What are we thinking there?
I'd have to say probably. I think England. Will scrape it this time round. I think the way Australia played against Wales wasn't the greatest game overall, but then again, Australia I don't think have been in great form. England will be looking to bounce back. I think they'll definitely be looking to improve upon that Japan victory. I mean, it wasn't a great victory by any means. To go into half time behind against Japan is not at all something to be shouted about. So I think that, Eddie Jones will be looking to improve upon his side's game this weekend, and Australia I think will be in for a test.
Right, thanks for that, guys. I think that just about wraps up the podcast. We've looked at last weekend's games, looked ahead to this weekend's games as well. It's been a great series so far, and hopefully it finishes off on a strong note. You've been listening to the Drive and More podcast.